Okay, today we're going to talk about the amendments to the Constitution. There are 27 amendments. Again, we have 7 articles to the Constitution, and we have 27 amendments. And some of these are very, very important in today's world. Others maybe not, but there still are several that are very applicable to today. So the Bill of Rights, again, just a review, was added in 1791. Again, these are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. Remember that the Founding Fathers, right away, one of the first things they did, the Federalists agreed to add these Bill of Rights. So our first 10 amendments are the Bill of Rights. So the First Amendment has 5 freedoms in it. It's a big one. I call it the RAPS Amendment, R-A-P-P-S. You can see that there. It's a good acronym or mnemonic device for you to remember the 5 freedoms. Freedom of religion, assembly, petition, press, and speech. Again, we watched the freedom of speech video, or you should have watched the freedom of speech video. Pretty good, very applicable in today's world for several of these. The Second Amendment is also very applicable. A lot of people, it's a big topic with the right to keep and bear arms. Again, this is, the NRA is big on this. They lobbied to keep the Second Amendment. What does the Second Amendment mean? Does it mean to keep any arms? Does it mean that we need a AR-15 for hunting? No, you probably need a shotgun for hunting or something else. But it's one of those things that what did the Founding Fathers mean by right to keep and bear arms? Well, they meant to protect your household. So how do you protect that? Handgun, shotgun, AR-15? That's always the big topic with the Second Amendment. The Third Amendment talks about quartering of troops. That was a big thing back in the colonial days because the British would house their troops in colonial homes. Not too applicable today. Fourth Amendment's a big one, unreasonable search and seizures. This is one where the government has to have reasonable cause to come into your house. Otherwise, it might violate unreasonable search and seizures. Big thing about cell phones, is the government involved in our cell phones? That's something that is going to be, I think, continuing on as we go. So the first 4 amendments, 1 through 4, are also nicknamed the Personal Liberties Amendments. Personal liberties. All right, the Fifth Amendment's a big one here. It's criminal proceedings. It's got a lot in it. Some of the main parts here, the fact that eminent domain, this is where the government can take private land for public use. So if they want to take your farm ground for a park or something, they can do so, but they have to invoke eminent domain, and they must give you payment for this, and it must be just payment. It must be a just compensation. You must be compensated for that. Double jeopardy is where you can't be tried for the same crime twice. It's a good movie with Ashley Judd in it. Self-incrimination, this one says, I plead the Fifth. This is where I don't have to self-incriminate myself. If the cops arrest me, I should be quiet, get a lawyer, plead the Fifth, don't say anything. That protects you, that self-incrimination. And it also talks about life, liberty, or property cannot be taken from you without due process. So again, the 5th one's a pretty big one, criminal proceedings. 6th one's also a pretty big one. It's the right to a speedy trial. Granted, the speedy trial aspect is not defined in the Constitution. They don't say it has to be done in a week or 2 weeks. It's just that once the trial starts, it's a speedy trial and public trial. 2, it's an impartial jury. You're supposed to have unbiased and not prejudiced jury. I always think of the movie A Time to Kill when I talk about this, just because Samuel Jackson probably didn't get a fair jury in that movie to start. And that goes with the next part. It has to be in the state or district that the crime was committed. You can ask for a change of venue if you'd like. You may be denied that, but let's say you don't feel that you're getting a impartial jury. You can maybe ask for a change of venue to a different district in the state. The 6th Amendment also talks about the right to counsel. Therefore, if you can't afford a lawyer, the government will provide one for you. You also have the right to be informed of your accusation. Basically, that way you can and your lawyer can know what you did, supposedly, allegedly, when, where. That way you can apply for the best defense. And you have the right to confront witnesses. Your lawyer can confront those witnesses again. So the Sixth Amendment's a pretty big one in criminal proceedings. All right, now we go through the next phase here. There's a bunch of them on this page. Seventh Amendment talks about jury trial in civil cases. Eighth Amendment is a no cruel or unusual punishment. Capital punishment basically is the big one in here. What is cruel and unusual punishment? Back in the Middle Ages, they used the Iron Maiden to kill people. They used the guillotine during the French Revolution. Is that cruel and unusual? I don't know. Is it cruel and unusual to electrocute somebody here in the United States, to hang them? We still have a lot of those on the state records that they're still applicable for this if there was a federal crime and the death penalty could be ensued. The ninth one's a tricky one. It's called your unenumerated rights. Basically, these are rights, natural rights. Again, the founders were very much into the natural rights, and they wanted to make sure that those natural rights are guaranteed. A couple I can think of it as an example that might come up big here might be the right to privacy, the right to clean air. These are all under there. And basically, they're rights not exactly listed. The Roe v. Wade, the right to privacy, could come up on this with the new judge that just got nominated by President Trump. There's unenumerated rights. The 10th Amendment then just gives all other reserved powers to the states. The 11th Amendment, so the first 10 are the Bill of Rights, once again. That's the first ones passed in 1791. The 11th Amendment was in 1798. This says that the federal government states cannot be sued in federal court. 12th Amendment, this changed the electoral process procedure. This is in 1804. Basically, now what this does is the president and vice president must run on the same ticket. Before this, they did not. They just took the top 2 vote getters, where you could have one be a Democrat, one be a Whig. They may not get along, but they're the president and vice president. So 12th Amendment changes this, where now you have to have a president and a vice president running on the same ticket. 13th Amendment talks about slavery. This is in 1865. It prohibits slavery. This is during the Civil War. 14th Amendment also deals with slavery. It gives citizenship and due process and equal protection under the law. So this one's become more apparent lately with the equal protection under the law, but it does give African Americans a right for citizenship. And the 15th Amendment says that you cannot be denied the right to vote because of your race, color, or previous servitude. Again, this would deal with giving African Americans the right to vote. 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments are labeled as the Civil War Amendments. 15th was 1870. The 14th was 1868. The 16th Amendment says the government can collect an income tax. This was in 1913. 17th Amendment talks about direct election of senators, also in 1913. 18th Amendment's always a big one. It's about prohibition. This was in 1919. This outlaws the manufacturing, consumption, and distribution of alcohol. Okay, so it makes that illegal. You cannot sell it, distribute it, drink it, nothing. That was 1919. Prohibition starts. 19th Amendment's a big one. It's a women's suffrage. This was in 1920. That means the women have the right to vote. 20th Amendment is the lame duck amendment. This is 1933. This basically just changes when the congressional and presidential terms begins. It used to be in March, and it switched to January 20th. So again, we're going to have an election in November. So if by chance Vice President Biden wins, he doesn't take office in November. He won't take office until January 20th. And so it shortens that lame duck time that there's somebody that may be ousted. They're not in there as long. 21st Amendment, this repeals the 18th Amendment. This was in 1933. Okay, so this basically now makes it illegal to consume, distribute, and manufacture alcohol. A lot of this had to do with the fact that we had the rise of bootleggers, speakeasies, moonshine, organized crime. A lot of these things came to power during Prohibition. The 21st now repeals that 18th Amendment. 22nd Amendment talks about a 2-term limit for the president. This is 1951. Again, the Constitution did not say there was a 2-term limit. President Washington, when he decided to be done in office, he said that 8 years was enough. Again, one of their big things is they didn't want to have too long of a person in power, too much power in that central government. So he thought that 2 terms was enough. And up until 1951, or then up until FDR, all the presidents abided by that. Franklin D. Roosevelt, he actually got elected to 4 terms in office. So after that, 1951, they changed that to a 2-term limit. 23rd Amendment talks about the District of Columbia getting an electoral vote. That was in 1961. The 24th Amendment says a poll tax is prohibited. That was in 1964. So one way they tried to not let African Americans or even poor whites vote was that they would have a poll tax where you had to pay to vote. That is prohibited. You don't have to pay to vote. It's your natural right to go vote in the United States. So the 24th Amendment eliminated the poll tax. 25th Amendment's a big one here with presidential succession disability. I just saw that there's talk about this in the news with presidential succession, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi talked about a commission on determining if our president now or in the future is able to hold office or if they're disabled. This also sets up, basically the succession of the president. If he actually does pass away, if somehow the vice president will take over, and then after that it goes into the Speaker of the House, and then the president's cabinet positions. An interesting tidbit on this: when Richard Nixon resigned from office, his vice president actually was Spiro Agnew. He had resigned before that, so President Nixon had nominated and appointed that Gerald Ford, Speaker of the House, become the vice president. Well, that was fine, but then when Richard Nixon resigned, Gerald Ford then ascended into the presidency. Therefore, Gerald Ford is the only president to never have been elected as the president or vice president in that. Interesting tidbit for you. 26th Amendment says that 18-year-olds can vote. That happened in 1971. And then the last one is the 27th Amendment on congressional pay. It was finally passed in 1992. It was actually proposed in 1789. And it was passed in 1992. It's about 200 years of this amendment being on the docket. And basically what this says is that Congress can elect to give themselves an increase in pay, but it doesn't happen until the next term. Okay, so if they would decide now to give themselves a raise in pay, it wouldn't happen until next year. And then that would go through for 2 years. And then if they decide to give themselves another raise in pay, it wouldn't happen until the next term. So it's a little bit different there with that, but 27th Amendment, that's the last one to pass, and that actually took over 200 years to get ratified. And that is a brief, introduction to the amendments. I want to make sure I got them all in one video. So if you have any questions about them, please ask, because a lot of these can be very applicable into our daily lives.